And now a quick word from our sponsors here at Viral Hip Hop News.
In a lot of ways, and contributed ultimately to me leaving the source some years later.
Now, how much was the source valued at its peak? What was it valued at?
I mean, some of that is subjective.
Right.
When we made a deal with the private equity fund, which was the Black Enterprise Fund in 2002, the company was valued at about 65 million based on the investment. They invested $12 million for 18% of the company at the time. So, I think there was, some people would say it was worth as much as 100 million, but somewhere in that range, 65 to 100 is fair to say.
Well, now moving forward, obviously, .com era has brought us things like we've never seen before on social media. One of them, a couple months ago, early 2000 or early this year, you and Royce got into it on Clubhouse. I was seeing and was listening to, obviously, for a situation that happened with Eminem and all that. Can you care to elaborate on what happened in that Clubhouse situation and where y'all at now?
I mean, I probably shouldn't have gone on Clubhouse. I guess I was bored and saw something and just jumped in there. I mean, it was hard to have like a really reasonable, discussion about things. Everybody was amped up, and, Royce really, I guess he was offended by some of the things I say. I don't know, but he just wowed out. And, I haven't talked to him since anything like that. But, that was just a blip. Nothing really much more I would say about that. Just keep it moving.
What did you say, if you don't mind me asking? I didn't hear it all.
What did I say on the?
What did you say that got him hot?
We were just talking about the impact of Eminem and how, what his impact was like, and also what it means, for me to be a white person in a Black culture and art form, and that, for me, I didn't see certain things out of Eminem, until a later time in his career. And I think that was something that, kind of pissed him off, and, whatever. But
how do you feel about the comment when people say whites are guests in hip hop, and then the whole, like 3 years ago was like the whole culture vulture, this discussion that came out fueled by Dame Dash. How does that make you feel? And what's your perspective and thoughts on that?
Yeah, shout out Dame. That's my boy for the Vulture book and everything. Right. I mean, I think it's a valid topic, a valid discussion that should be taken seriously. I mean, I feel like, hip hop is a culture that welcomes everybody. You could be Black, white, Chinese, rich, poor, whatever. It will welcome you if you are authentic to yourself. We value that kind of realness and authenticity. But I also feel like hip hop is something that was created out of the struggles and the pain and the hardships of, primarily Black inner city communities across this country. That's the struggle that gave rise to hip hop, and the expressions of things that we've all heard through hip hop over the years. And one of the things that does bother me about hip hop today is, I feel like, it's this multi-billion-dollar global industry now, and there was a time in the 90s where it was moving as a social and cultural and political movement to affect change in these communities that I'm talking about. But 25 years later, we're sitting here and we're seeing that conditions are, just as bad, if not worse, than they were, and that, hip hop has not been able to direct, a larger portion of the resources and money being generated by the culture back into those communities. So I feel like as a white person in hip hop, you have to understand that, and you have to respect that. That you should, be someone that is aware of not just racism, but systemic racism and what that means, and how it affects people and communities and lives. So that's kind of the way I feel about it. I think that there's a lot of folks that get into it just because it's fun or whatever their reasons might be. I think I would like to think that if you're not white, you would be would want to be aware and sensitive around those subject matters to consider yourself truly a part of the hip hop community.
What's your thoughts as a white male when it comes to business in hip hop? Because we talk about that more online, like us as journalists and us owning our own platforms and things like that. When we disseminate information, we feel as though there's a responsibility to the culture to do it the right way. And people that are blamed for being culture vultures, obviously they go and run with it and do a disservice to the culture. In our opinions, they run and giving people's information, albeit the people that they interview or the people that they dealing with, provide them the information that they distribute. We can always kind of go, that was iffy in that. When it comes to business in hip hop, is that something that kind of comes to your personal thought process when it comes to that, like making sure that you have all artists' personal feelings and personal just overall business in general in thought, or is it just strictly business? Like, just keep it 100.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly, but I think you're saying like, is it just business no matter what, or is there, do you have to take other things into consideration as a business person? And
correct, yeah.
I think again, everybody has their own way of doing things. You can choose to be a certain type of businessman that's just ruthless and cutthroat, and and business is that to an extent. But I've always believed that you can be successful in business, but you don't have to be, somebody that takes advantage of people and somebody that exploits people. And, there's a way to do good business and be very successful at business and also maintain, some of your ethics and morals and do something that makes a difference. So that's what I've always been about. That's what Breakbeat is going to be about. I think that's the way I look at it.
Cool. Hip hop, hip hop, hip hop, hip bars is back. Hip hop, Sam and oh God, what's up with you? I done watched them niggas do interview after interview. They not culture vultures, the culture something they been into. So if you never gave them a view, I recommend you do. Cause when they question guests, they message is not subliminal. It don't matter if you a rookie.